You want to know why we keep a human on our crew? Captain Zixtal clicked his mandibles in what passed for amusement among the arthropodians. Sit down, grab a drink, and I'll tell you about Sarah Chen. Best damn engineer this side of the Carina Arm, and the reason we're all still breathing. The reporter, a young Meridian with too many eyes and not enough experience, adjusted their recording apparatus and settled into what humans would probably call a slouch, if humans could bend their spines in 17 different directions. See, about 3 cycles ago, we were running cargo through the derelict zone. Yeah, that derelict zone. The one where the precursors left all their broken toys floating around like cosmic building blocks. Most crews avoid it like radiation sickness, but the pay for salvage runs? Let's just say it makes the risk worthwhile. Usually. Zixtal took a long pull from his fermented nectar, membrane-covered eyes going distant with memory. We had a solid crew. Best in the business. Me, First Officer Krathos. She's selenite, you know how they are with calculations. Basically living quantum computers. Our security chief Dex from the Galactic Confederation, and about 15 others. But Sarah? She was special. Still is. The captain's mandibles clicked again, this time in what might have been pride. First time I interviewed her for the position, I thought she was crazy. Here's this tiny human, barely reaching my thorax, telling me she could optimize our engines beyond manufacturer specs and promising she'd be worth triple her salary in saved maintenance costs. The crazy part? She was underselling herself. The reporter's recording device hummed softly as it captured every word. One of their eyes swiveled toward the device to check the power level, while the others remained fixed on the captain. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You wanted to know why we keep her around? Why pretty much every serious long-haul crew has at least one human these days? Well, it started with that salvage run. We'd picked up some interesting readings from an old precursor station. The kind of readings that make salvage operators drool and safety inspectors have nightmares. The bridge of the Star Scavenger was unusually quiet as they approached the derelict station. The massive structure hung in space like a forgotten child's toy, its once gleaming surface now pitted and scarred by millennia of cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts. "That's big," Sarah commented, stating the obvious in that peculiarly human way that somehow made everyone else notice details they'd missed. "And if I'm reading these energy signatures right, something in there is still running." Kraval's crystalline form shimmered as she processed the sensor data. "Impossible. The station has been abandoned for at least 50,000 years. No power source could—" Yeah, no power source could last that long," Sarah interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "Except precursor tech doesn't play by our rules, does it? Look at these harmonic patterns in the radiation signature. That's not decay. That's a functional system in low-power mode." The human moved closer to the main viewport, her reflection barely visible against the backdrop of stars and ancient metal. "Captain, we need to check this out. Whatever's generating that signal, it's not just valuable, it's revolutionary. I should have known right then we were in for trouble. Humans have this thing about them, this inability to leave mysteries alone. Most species evolved with healthy fear responses. See something dangerous, stay away. Humans, they see something dangerous and start making lists of ways to poke it. Prep the shuttle," I ordered, trying to ignore the way Sarah's face lit up with that terrifying human expression they call a grin. "Standard salvage team, Sarah, Kraval, Dex, and myself. Full containment gear, weapons hot." The shuttle ride was tense. Even Dex, usually the most talkative of our crew, kept his muzzle shut as we approached the station's main docking array. The massive doors were partially open, frozen in eternal welcome like the maw of some ancient space-dwelling predator. "Well, that's not ominous at all," Sarah muttered as she guided our shuttle through the gap. "Anyone else getting serious horror vid vibes, or is that just me?" Horror. Vid. Kraval's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. "Human entertainment where people make obviously poor life choices for the audience's amusement," Dex explained, his tail swishing nervously. "Like, oh, I don't know, docking with an ancient alien station giving off impossible energy readings?" Sarah snorted. "Please, in a proper horror vid, at least one of us would be sneaking off to mate right now." "That's disgusting," Kraval declared. "This is a professional salvage operation." "Exactly why we'll probably survive," Sarah agreed cheerfully. "Genre awareness is key." The shuttle's landing was smoother than it had any right to be, given the state of the docking bay. Sarah had a way with machines that bordered on the supernatural, something I'd noticed all humans shared to some degree. Where other species saw machines as tools to be used according to strict protocols, humans treated them like temperamental pets that could be coaxed and sweet-talked into cooperation. The station's artificial gravity was still functioning, which should have been our first warning. The second warning came when our atmospheric sensors showed breathable air, despite 50 millennia of abandonment. But we were professionals, and more importantly, we were greedy. The potential value of a working precursor power source was enough to make us ignore our better judgment. "Structures sound," Sarah reported, checking her handheld scanner as we moved through the corridors. "Air's clean. Really clean, actually. Like, suspiciously clean. And these readings are getting stronger. Whatever's still running in here, it's big." Kraval's crystalline body was vibrating slightly, her species equivalent of nervous fidgeting. "The architecture is unlike any other precursor station I've studied. These curves, these patterns, they're wrong somehow." "Wrong how?" I asked, my mandibles tightening with concern. "Like they were designed by something that didn't think in 3 dimensions, she replied. "Or perhaps something that thought in too many dimensions." "Oh good, non-Euclidean architecture. That's definitely not a bad sign," Sarah muttered. "Dex, you're being awfully quiet." The Canid's ears were flat against his skull. "Something here smells wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but wrong. Like..." He struggled for a moment, trying to find the words. "Like the smell of a thunderstorm before it hits, but sideways? Sideways thunder. Great. This just keeps getting better." Sarah checked her scanner again. "Power source should be just ahead. Large chamber, lots of active systems. Anyone want to place bets on whether we find an ancient evil waiting to be awakened?" "Your species' obsession with fictional disaster scenarios is not helpful," Kraval chimed in, her crystalline form pulsing with irritation. "No, but it is therapeutic," Sarah replied. "Besides, gaming out worst-case scenarios is a valid survival strategy. Speaking of which..." She pulled a small device from her pocket and tossed it to me. "Emergency beacon, just in case. Designed it myself. Works on quantum entanglement principles. No signal to block, no battery to die. If everything goes sideways, crush it in your mandibles. It'll alert the ship." I caught the device, noting how it seemed to hum slightly in my grip. "You just happen to have this ready?" "I'm a human on a salvage crew, Captain. I always have a backup plan. Usually several. Usually involving explosions." The chamber ahead of us was vast, easily large enough to house a small ship. And at its center, suspended in a web of what looked like solid light, was something. "Oh," Sarah breathed, her eyes wide. "Oh, that's beautiful. And impossible. And probably going to kill us all." The object, if you could call it that, seemed to shift and change every time you looked at it directly. It was roughly spherical, but the surface moved like liquid metal, patterns flowing across it in ways that hurt the eyes to follow. Arcs of energy danced between it and the light web holding it in place. Kraval's entire form had gone still, a sign of intense concentration among her kind. "The energy readings. They're not just power generation. This is computing. At a quantum level. The entire sphere is a single massive quantum computer, still running after all this time." "Running what?" Dex asked, his tail now completely still. Never a good sign from a Canid. "That's the real question, isn't it?" Sarah was already moving toward one of the control panels that ringed the chamber. "Let's find out. Carefully," I ordered. "No touching anything without..." The entire station shuddered. "I didn't touch anything," Sarah protested immediately. "That wasn't me!" The sphere in the center of the chamber began to pulse with increasing intensity. The web of light holding it began to flicker and distort. "Kraval!" I barked. "Energy levels are spiking. The containment field is destabilizing. If it fails..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. We all knew what an uncontrolled quantum reaction could do. "Options?" I demanded. "Working on it!" Sarah was already elbow-deep in an access panel she'd somehow opened. "The system's failing because it's trying to maintain quantum coherence across too large a volume. If we can partition the processing load, maybe..." Another tremor shook the station, stronger this time. Warning lights we hadn't even known existed began flashing along the walls. "We need to leave," Dex growled. "Now! No time!" Sarah shot back. "That containment field fails. The reaction will take out half this sector. We need to stabilize it first." Her hands were flying over the ancient controls, somehow making sense of interfaces designed by minds utterly alien to our own. "How are you even reading that?" Kraval demanded. "I'm not. But quantum mechanics is quantum mechanics, even if you're a possibly insane precursor civilization. The math is universal." Sarah's voice had taken on that particular tone humans get when they're simultaneously terrified and excited. Kraval, I need your processing power. Link up with this terminal and help me calculate the partition boundaries. The Selenite hesitated for only a moment before pressing her crystalline form against the console. Her surface began to ripple as she interfaced with the ancient system. Dex, Sarah continued, not looking up from her work. I need you to get to the other side of the chamber and find the emergency cooling controls. They'll be marked with whatever the precursor equivalent of blue is in the ultraviolet spectrum. How do you know that? Because engineers are engineers, no matter what species they are, and nobody changes the color coding for emergency systems unless they want people to die, Sarah snapped. Captain, remember that beacon I gave you? Get ready to use it. If this doesn't work... Another tremor, strong enough to knock me off my feet. The sphere was now a blur of motion, its surface roiling like a sun in miniature. Sarah, I started. Little busy saving our lives here, Captain. Her hands never stopped moving. Kraval, you got those calculations. The mathematics are... impossible. The number of variables doesn't matter. We just need to be close enough. Physics is forgiving if you ask nicely. Dex? Found the controls. The cannon's voice came from across the chamber. At least I think I did. Good. When I give the signal, pull everything marked with not blue. Captain, if this doesn't work, crush that beacon and run like hell. The sphere was now painful to look at directly, its surface moving in ways that suggested it was trying to occupy several dimensions at once. Sarah. Kraval's voice had taken on an odd harmonic. The containment field is at critical. We have perhaps 30 seconds. That's plenty of time. Sarah laughed. Actually laughed. You know what humans are really good at, Captain? Besides surviving things we shouldn't? What? I managed to ask. We're really good at taking complex problems and finding stupid simple solutions. Like this. Dex, now! The cannon pulled the controls. The chamber was suddenly filled with a fine mist. Some kind of coolant system that had somehow survived 50,000 years. Kraval, partition now! Captain, might want to close your eyes. I did. Even through closed eyes I saw the flash. Even through my sealed environment suit I felt the wave of something wash over us. Then, silence. I opened my eyes slowly, expecting... well, I'm not sure what I was expecting. Death, probably. Instead, I saw the sphere, now floating serenely in its containment field, its surface moving in gentle, regular patterns. Ha! Sarah's voice was slightly hysterical. That worked. I mean, of course it worked. I totally knew it would work. What? Kraval's voice was shaky. What did you do? Oh, you know. Sarah was grinning again. That terrifying human expression that usually meant she'd done something brilliant and probably impossible. Just partitioned a quantum computer the size of a small ship into manageable chunks, used emergency coolant to help maintain coherence during the transition, and basically did the equivalent of turning it off and on again. You know, standard engineering stuff. Standard. Kraval's form flickered in disbelief. Sarah, what you just did violated at least 3 laws of physics. Did it? Sarah looked genuinely surprised. Huh. I'll have to write a paper or something. After we figure out what this thing actually is and hopefully get rich from it. The captain paused in his story to order another drink. The reporter's recording device hummed patiently. So that's why you keep her on your crew? They asked. Because she can solve impossible problems? Zixtal clicked his mandibles in what might have been laughter. No, that's just the start of the story. See, after we stabilized the quantum core, we found out what it actually was. Turned out the precursors had built a predictive model of the entire galaxy. Every star, every planet, every possible interaction, all running in real time. Or it was, until it started to fail. Sarah's stupid, simple solution didn't just save our lives. It saved the most valuable piece of precursor tech ever discovered. And now? The captain gestured around the busy spaceport bar. Now every major research institution in known space has access to a partition of that quantum core, thanks to Sarah's brilliance. The predictions it makes have revolutionized everything from trade routes to terraform planning. And Sarah? She owns about 15% of the patents on the stabilization technology. She could retire tomorrow and live like royalty for the rest of her life. But she doesn't? Of course not. She's human. They don't know how to stop. He finished his drink. You want to know why we keep a human on our crew? Because humans look at the impossible and see a challenge. They look at certain death and see an interesting problem to solve. They take the most advanced technology ever discovered and fix it with the equivalent of percussive maintenance and a reboot. The captain leaned forward, all four eyes fixed on the reporter. But most importantly, we keep them around because they make the impossible seem normal. After that incident, Sarah went right back to work. Next week, she rebuilt our entire engine assembly using parts she scavenged from the station. Improved our efficiency by 300%. The week after that, she figured out how to use the quantum core's predictions to plot safer routes through the derelict zone. She treats galaxy-changing discoveries like just another day at work. And that's good? That's essential. Zixtal's mandibles clicked decisively. In this business, you need someone who can look at certain death and say, I can work with this. Someone who treats the impossible as merely improbable, and the improbable as an interesting challenge. Someone who carries backup plans for their backup plans, usually involving explosions. In short, you need a human. The captain stood, his full height impressive even in the high-ceilinged bar. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to my ship. Sarah's installing some modifications to our shield generators that she swears will let us dive into gas giants safely. She's probably right, but I like to be there just in case we need to evacuate. One last question, the reporter called after him. You said earlier that Sarah was special. Special how? Zixtal paused at the door. Special? Oh no, you misunderstand. Sarah's completely average, as humans go. That's what makes them so terrifying, and so essential. His mandibles clicked in amusement one final time. Talk to any crew that works the dangerous routes. They'll all tell you the same thing. If you want to survive the impossible, keep a human around. Because sooner or later, you're going to run into something that can't be solved with conventional thinking. And when that happens, you want someone whose species turned finding ridiculous solutions to certain death scenarios into an evolutionary strategy. The captain had barely finished speaking when his communicator chimed. He checked it and made a sound that might have been a sigh. Sarah, the reporter guessed. Sarah, Zixtal confirmed. Apparently she's found a way to, and I quote, boost our sensor range by about 500% using some interesting quantum principles and a broken coffee maker. I should probably get back before she accidentally invents a new form of physics. Again. Again? But the captain was already gone, leaving the reporter with their recording device and a half-empty bar. They sat there for a long moment, multiple eyes blinking in sequence as they processed everything they'd heard. Finally, they spoke to their recording device. Note to self, follow-up story idea. Why human engineers should be classified as weapons of mass construction. Sarah Chen was exactly where Zixtal expected to find her, hanging upside down from a maintenance scaffold in the engine room, surrounded by a cloud of holographic diagrams and what appeared to be the dismembered remains of several major ship systems. Please tell me that's not our main power coupling, the captain said by way of greeting. Of course not, Sarah replied without looking up. That's our backup power coupling. The main one is... She waved vaguely at a pile of components that might once have been crucial to the ship's operation. Somewhere in there. Don't worry, I'll have it all back together before we need it. And when will we need it? Oh, about 20 minutes ago. Now she did look up, flashing that characteristic human grin. But I've got us running on the quantum core tap I installed last week. We're actually getting better power efficiency this way. Which is good, because wait until you see what I've done with the sensor array. Zixtal felt his mandibles twitch. Sarah, what have we discussed about making major modifications to critical systems without consulting me first? That I should do it when you're not around to worry about it? She dropped from the scaffold, landing with the casual grace that still surprised him coming from a species that evolved on a high-gravity world. Look, I know it seems crazy. Everything you do seems crazy. But I've run all the simulations. I even had Krathos check my math. This modification will let us detect quantum wake signatures from ships up to 3 parsecs away. Do you know what this means for salvage operations? I assume you're about to tell me. It means we can spot active quantum cores before anyone else. Like that precursor station, we could have detected it from the other side of the sector. No more stumbling around in the dark. No more competing with other salvage crews. We'll have first pick of every major find in the derelict zone. The captain looked at the dismantled systems, then at his engineer's enthusiastic face, then back at the systems. And you're sure this will work? Absolutely. Well, 95% sure. Okay, 85%. But the quantum core predictions give it a 93.7% chance of success. And you know how conservative those estimates are. And the coffee maker? Oh, that's just for the interface calibration. Turns out the heating element resonates at exactly the right frequency to... You know what? Probably better if I don't explain that part. Plausible deniability and all that. Zixtal made a mental note to update the ship's insurance policy. Again. How long until we're back on main power? Give me an hour. 2 tops. Unless you want me to install the new shield modifications at the same time. I've got this great idea about using quantum entanglement to... One modification at a time, Sarah. Let's make sure we can detect salvage before we start diving into gas giants to retrieve it. Spoil sport. But she was already turning back to her work, hands moving with the sure confidence that came from understanding machines on what sometimes seemed like a spiritual level. Oh, by the way, I think I figured out why the precursors abandoned that station. The captain felt his dorsal plates stiffen. Oh? Yeah. Based on the data patterns in the quantum core, they didn't abandon it at all. They evolved beyond the need for physical form and uploaded their consciousness into the computer network. The core we found wasn't just a predictive model. It was their backup plan. A way to preserve their civilization's knowledge until someone came along who could handle it responsibly. And you didn't think to mention this earlier? Sarah shrugged, already half buried in the power coupling reassembly. Didn't seem relevant at the time. Besides, they're not dangerous or anything. They actually think we're hilarious, especially humans. They've been watching us solve problems by breaking physics for years, apparently. The whole quantum core destabilization thing? That was a test. They wanted to see how we'd handle it. Zixtal felt a headache coming on. Sarah, are you telling me we have an ancient alien civilization living in our quantum core? More like we have access to their filtered knowledge and predictive capabilities. They're not really living in there. They exist in a higher dimensional space now. The quantum core is just their way of interacting with our level of reality. Kind of like, you know how we use computer interfaces to interact with simpler systems? It's like that, but with dimensions instead of processing power. And this doesn't worry you? She poked her head out from behind a panel, looking genuinely puzzled. Why would it? They're basically just really advanced tech support now. Actually, they've been helping me with some of my more experimental modifications. That's where I got the idea for the sensor array upgrade. The captain closed all 4 eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different numerical systems. When he opened them again, Sarah was back to work, humming what he recognized as an old human space shanty, while she reassembled a power system that was now apparently partially designed by transcendent alien beings. Just another day working with a human engineer. Sarah? Mm-hmm. When you're done here, we need to have a serious discussion about information sharing protocols. Sure thing, Captain. Right after I finish implementing the quantum-enhanced coffee maker design they shared with me. Did you know you can use quantum entanglement to ensure perfect coffee temperature across multiple cups? The precursors were really serious about their beverages, apparently. Zixtal made another mental note to update not just the insurance policy, but also his will. Working with humans was profitable, fascinating, and occasionally revolutionary. But it was never, ever boring, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Back in the spaceport bar, the reporter was still working on their story when a group of salvage crew captains came in, all looking slightly shell-shocked. Let me guess, the bartender said, already reaching for their preferred drinks. Human engineer? The captains nodded in unison. What was it this time? Mine figured out how to use quantum entanglement to make instant coffee, one said. Mine rewrote our navigation systems to account for 11 dimensions, another added. Mine just made friends with a posthuman alien civilization, a third muttered into their drink. The reporter's recording device hummed softly as it captured every word. They had a feeling their editor was going to love this story. After all, everyone knows that the toughest crews keep a human on board. They just don't always understand why until it's too late to worry about it. And that, the seasoned bartender said to a wide-eyed group of newly graduated xeno-engineers, is why the Galactic Safety Board had to create an entirely new classification of engineering licenses specifically for humans. The bar had gotten busier as the night cycle progressed, filling with the usual mix of crew members, traders, and the occasional wide-eyed tourist. But tonight's crowd had a distinct theme. It seemed every other conversation was about human engineers and their latest reality-defying achievements. I heard, one of the young graduates, a Voltarian with sparking neural tendrils, said, that they're actually considering making it mandatory to have at least one human engineer on any ship planning to explore uncharted space. Something about ensuring creative problem-solving capabilities in unprecedented situations. The bartender, who had seen enough human engineers come through to know better, made a sound that might have been a laugh. Creative is one word for it. Last week, I had a human engineer in here explaining to her captain how she'd modified their ship's waste recycling system to generate exotic matter. Exotic matter? Another graduate's photoreceptors brightened with interest. But that's theoretically impossible without— Kid, let me give you some advice. The bartender leaned in, all 6 appendages busy mixing drinks while they spoke. The word impossible doesn't mean much when humans are involved, especially their engineers. They treat the laws of physics like guidelines at best and suggestions at worst. Meanwhile, aboard the Star Scavenger, Sarah Chen was having what she considered a perfectly reasonable discussion with Krathos about the nature of reality. Look, she said, gesturing with a wrench that definitely hadn't been quantum-enhanced, probably. All I'm saying is that if we look at space-time as more of a suggestion than a rigid framework— Space-time is not a suggestion! Kraval's crystalline form was vibrating with what might have been existential distress. It is a fundamental property of our universe. Sure. But have you considered that maybe our universe is just really bad at enforcing its own rules? I mean, quantum mechanics already proves that reality gets weird if you look at it too closely. I'm just proposing we exploit that weirdness for faster-than-light coffee delivery. Captain Zixtal, who had learned to recognize the warning signs of an impending human-induced physics violation, chose that moment to intervene. Sarah, what did we discuss about breaking fundamental forces before breakfast? That I should wait until after you've had your morning caffeine? She brightened. Which is exactly why this FTL coffee system is so important. Imagine hot, fresh coffee, instantaneously delivered anywhere in the galaxy through quantum tunneling. The energy requirements alone would be— Kraval began. Negligible if we use the quantum core's processing power to calculate optimal tunneling points. Sarah interrupted. I've already got the basic prototype working. Watch! Before anyone could stop her, not that they could have, humans being surprisingly quick when excited about potentially reality-breaking experiments, she activated a small device on her workbench. There was a sound that might have been space-time clearing its throat in embarrassment, and suddenly a steaming cup of coffee appeared on the captain's desk. Ta-da! Sarah beamed. Perfect temperature, 0 transit time, and I'm pretty sure I only created 3 small temporal paradoxes in the process. Don't worry, they'll sort themselves out. Probably. Kraval's whole form had gone still, the crystalline equivalent of a blue screen of death. That's not— You can't— Already did. Sarah took a sip from her own quantum-tunneled coffee. The precursors are really excited about it, actually. Apparently they never thought to use quantum entanglement for beverage delivery. They're helping me scale up the system. Think bigger than coffee. We could revolutionize emergency supply delivery, medical transport, even— Sarah. The captain's voice had that special tone reserved for moments when his human engineer was about to casually upend galactic civilization. Please tell me you haven't shared this technology with other humans yet. Well, not directly, but I may have posted the basic principles on the Human Engineers Quantum Mechanics Forum. You know, that social network where we share interesting theoretical breakthroughs? Zixtal felt all 4 of his eyes trying to twitch simultaneously. The same forum where last month someone figured out how to use a microwave to create a temporary pocket universe? Hey, that was a legitimate breakthrough in quantum gastronomy. Do you know how hard it is to perfectly heat a burrito in 0G? Before the captain could formulate a response that adequately conveyed his concern about humans casually manipulating the fabric of reality for improved lunch options, the ship's communication system chimed. Captain, Dex's voice came through, carrying that particular tone of resignation unique to non-humans dealing with human-induced phenomena. We're getting some strange readings from the cargo bay, something about localized time dilation and spontaneously appearing coffee cups. Sarah had the grace to look slightly sheepish. Ah, right. Forgot to account for quantum resonance in a closed system. Don't worry, I can fix that. Just need to adjust the temporal variance and maybe add a small black hole. No black holes! The entire crew shouted in unison, their voices carrying the weight of experience. Even a tiny one, for science? Sarah. The captain used his most authoritative mandible click. What's our policy on artificial singularities inside the ship? She sighed. Not before completing proper paperwork and getting approval from at least 3 different safety boards. Then she brightened. But what about— or any other space-time anomalies? He added quickly. You guys are no fun. But she was already modifying her device, probably to make it slightly less reality-breaking. Fine, I'll stick to normal quantum tunneling. But I'm telling you, we're missing out on some really interesting possibilities for bagel toasting. The story spread quickly through the spaceport, as stories about human engineers tend to do. By the end of the day's cycle, 3 different regulatory bodies had issued emergency guidelines about quantum beverage transportation. 2 major shipping corporations had tried to hire Sarah away from the Star Scavenger with increasingly ridiculous offers. And the Galactic Patent Office had to create an entirely new classification for physics-adjacent innovations. In the bar, the bartender was still dispensing wisdom to the wide-eyed graduates. So remember, they said, polishing a glass with one appendage while mixing drinks with 3 others. If you ever find yourself on a crew with a human engineer, there are 3 important rules. 1. Never say anything is impossible. They take it as a personal challenge. 2. Always check your coffee for quantum entanglement before drinking. And 3. Keep your insurance paid up. What about the thing with the black holes? One of the graduates asked. The bartender's color-shifting skin rippled with amusement. Kid, that's rule 0. No artificial singularities before filing the paperwork. We learned that one the hard way after the Great Bagel Incident of 2247. The what? Story for another time. But let's just say there's a reason why human engineers are required to take a course called Why We Don't Break Physics Before Breakfast, before getting their licenses these days. Above the bar, displayed proudly next to various salvage licenses and safety certificates, hung a small sign that seemed to sum up the galaxy's general attitude toward human engineers. Warning: this establishment serves caffeinated beverages to human engineers. Management is not responsible for any resulting violations of physical laws, temporal paradoxes, or spontaneous technological revolutions. Please check your coffee for quantum entanglement before consumption. And somewhere aboard the Star Scavenger, Sarah Chen was already working on her next impossible project, because that's what human engineers do. They make the impossible possible, one broken law of physics at a time, usually before breakfast, and always with coffee. The end.